Listen to what the famous Harvard evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould said about the fossil record.
The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil records persists as the trade secret of paleontology.
Have you ever been mystified as to why human beings and apes have so many similar features? After all, compare our hands to the hands of apes. They're very similar, and our feet are a lot the same. In fact, we can make many of the same facial expressions and other things that apes can do. To prove this point, we hired an orangutan for the day and had some fun. Check this out. When I'm happy, my face goes something like this. When I'm embarrassed, if I don't agree, if I want to be nasty, if I've heard a bad joke, if I've heard enough, if I'm feeling affectionate, if I agree. Does this prove that men evolved from apes? No, not at all. Think of it like this. Think of the biplane and the 747 jumbo jet. They're both very similar. After all, they both have wings, they both have landing gear, cockpits. Does that mean that the jet evolved from the little biplane? Not at all. It just means they have a common designer. The designer used a similar blueprint for each one. Same with us. God, the creator of the world and the universe, is our common designer. He simply used a similar blueprint when creating the hands and feet and facial expressions of men and apes.
Despite the fact that there is no evidence when it comes to the theory of evolution, we're continually told that primates are our relatives. So we decided we'd have a little fun and call a number of airlines and ask if we could have a relative fly on the plane with us.
U.S. Airways Office of Consumer Affairs, this is Ken.
American Airlines, Nicole.
Caroline, it's Randy, hello.
CCR Chester, how can I help you?
I'm flying with a friend, and I'd like to take a relative with us. He works in the movie industry, so he'll have two managers with him, and the reason for the managers is he's a little slow intellectually. He's also got physical problems with underdeveloped feet, so he can't stand upright. His name is Bam Bam. He's actually an orangutan, and what we want to do is take him on the flight with two managers. Is it possible to do that?
No, sir.
No, sir?
No, sir, we can't transport animals on Southwest, sir.
I mean, he's cute. Is that possible?
I have to admit I haven't been asked that before. I can certainly take a look into that.
The only way that we would transport a primate would be in the cargo hold as air cargo.
So you wouldn't let him in the cabin even if he's a relative?
That's a relative of whom?
Of me, of human beings. That's what they teach in universities, that we're related to primates.
I understand that, but primates aren't transported in the cabin.
Is that possible?
No, sir, it's not.
Do you think we came from apes?
Oh, sir, I wouldn't be able to get into that.
That's not something that I can discuss in a work capacity, sir.
Do you believe we come from apes?
Sir, you mind holding for just a second, please?
You're not sure?
One moment, sir.
Thank you. He said I've got a weirdo on the phone.
No, sir, I don't wish to offer my personal opinion at this time.
Despite the fact that airlines won't allow primates on planes for obvious reasons, there are some scientists who would have us believe that primates are just about as intelligent as human beings. So Kirk and I took an orangutan to lunch to see if it was true.
A few salads would be great.
Salads and some water, maybe?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Kirk ordered lunch. He ordered salads, and you'll see this was a mistake in a moment. Right at the beginning, the ape began sucking our tracks, and I thought, well, he's got a taste for them, so look at him trying to steer me out. I was trying to put it in his mouth to keep him happy.
Then he seemed happy to eat them. They're very tasteful.
Here comes the salad.
In came the lunch. Now, you notice they're salads, but I said to bring a plain salad for the orangutan and put cheese and tomato on ours. And that caused Bam Bam to break the 10th commandment. He began to covet our lunch because ours was obviously better than his. So I decided I'd give him my lunch. I sacrificed my lunch for this scene. And you can see he's quite happy with it. He's eating the cheese, he's eating the tomato. It's good, healthy food. Look at that. He's eating using a fork. Then he decided to go for Kirk's lunch. All etiquette was out the door. He just grabbed it from his plate and began stuffing his mouth like some beast, untrained. Now, it was around this point of time I thought to myself, this is not working. This is becoming a bit of a nightmare. I was actually impressed he was using a fork until he lifted it up like that. I thought I was going to get stabbed. So we decided we'd move all the food, the forks, the books, the tracts off the table and just have a plain tablecloth. He couldn't get up to mischief with a plain tablecloth. But look at what he does. He puts his hand under the tablecloth and then pulls it back like a tent. It was really like having lunch with Dennis the Menace on steroids. At this point in time, he decides he'll suck on the tablecloth. So we decided we'd finish the scene, and look, he's still sucking on the tablecloth. My dream turned into a nightmare.
The incident reinforced the fact that the primate is limited when it comes to the unique ability, the human ability to reason, to invent, to appreciate the sound of music. You see, you don't get orangutans forming themselves into an orchestra. You don't get them forming themselves into a court system to mete out justice to its fellow creatures. This isn't because he's a prehistoric man who's less evolved than us, but it's because he's another species.
The revered father of evolution, the man who really made the theory popular, is Charles Darwin. He wrote Origin of Species and the Descent of Man. Ladies, listen to what he had to say about women. The chief distinction in the intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by man attaining to a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than women can attain, whether requiring deep thought, reason, or imagination, or merely the use of the senses and hands. Did you hear that? He's saying that man has evolved to a higher eminence over women in basically anything he decides to do, whether it requires reason, imagination, or deep thought. Darwinian evolution, at its core, is not only male chauvinistic, but it's also very racist. Charles Darwin wants us to believe that black people are less evolved than whites.
If we can't convince you of how unscientific the theory of evolution is, perhaps these following experts can.
Ernest Chain, Nobel Prize winner, said in reference to the theory of evolution, "I would rather believe in fairies than in such wild speculation." Sir Arthur Keith, the physical anthropologist and anatomist who wrote the foreword to Darwin's Origin of the Species 100th Anniversary Edition, said, "Evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it only because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable." Malcolm Muggeridge, British journalist and philosopher, said, "I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it's been applied, will be one of the great jokes in history books of the future."
A wise man once said, "Man will believe anything as long as it's not in the Bible." Unfortunately, that is so true.
Can you give me any example of a transitional form, going from one kind of an animal to another kind?
Transitional form between one and another? Well, the thing is, it already is an animal, whatever it is. You mean like saying one that's halfway between this and this animal? Can't think of anything right off the moment.
The parrot that's on your arm, God created. How could science make a parrot?
Science, nature made it.
Nature made itself?
Yes, absolutely.
So they made the parrot.
Evolution.
So evolution made it?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't believe God created things?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to as God.
The creator.
To me, evolution, nature is God.